morning, everyone. Happy Monday. I'm the Gray Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Monday, July 17th, 2023. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? First card that we are starting our day off with today is Strength card in its reversal. So this is probably speaking towards some of that difficult energy that we saw coming through yesterday. We did see that there were some challenges for both masculine and feminine energy coming through yesterday, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to. The important thing to keep in mind right now as it relates to this card is this does not require a moment of weakness, but rather that this is a moment that you are finding some points of vulnerability, even as you have to go through different situations or circumstances from which you have to come towards them in a brave fashion. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, the second card we have coming through in our 5-card spread is, we have here the Chariot. And so we really like seeing this right now because what we are really identifying is this is speaking towards some of that point of vulnerability that you may currently be experiencing. This will hit a little bit different depending on where you are on this collective at this point. For half of the collective right now, again, there is a moment that is having a point of self-doubt. We saw some of this self-doubt coming through over the last few days, especially about 2 days ago. You'll recall there were a lot of feelings of concerns around your own ability of the self coming forward. But what we're really identifying right now is this is that moment that you are working very hard through any of these feelings of vulnerability that you're currently experiencing right now by driving forward on your plans, on your goals, setting that path forward for yourself at this moment. And not only based on yourself at this time, but with a lot of care and orientation in consideration with the energy that is harmonizing around you at this time. Putting that care and analysis in, making sure those who are around you who are working with you in some capacity are on the same page, potentially a lot of productive conversations happening today as it relates to plans, as it relates to the path moving forward, all to address some feelings or anxieties as it relates to one's own sense of vulnerability at this time. We're seeing what we like so much about this is we're seeing the blockage, but we're seeing the immediacy of the solution coming to the forefront right now, because while you may be feeling some moments of vulnerability at this time, you're not necessarily stopping them or letting them block you from being able to find that path ahead. In fact, you're using them as a clarifying point to help you overcome any of these internal feelings or doubts or fears that you're currently experiencing at this time. Continuing to get clarification, third card coming through right now in our 5-card spread is, we have here our 4 of Swords in its reversal, back out on the table. This card came up as one of our cards just not too long ago. You will recall that one of the circumstances and situations that we were paying attention to was the fact that over the last few days, a lot of blockages and hurdles were being addressed as it relates to circumstances and situations from the past. What we keep seeing that is very intriguing, we've been seeing this over the last few days, it is rising back up to the surface today right now, is this point of recognizing that in order to go forward right now, there may be some area or consideration that needs to be paid about going backwards at the same time. There's something here about something from the past needing to be addressed, either on a metaphysical level within the internal self right now, or practical situations or circumstances that are requiring you to go back to a point of addressing to overcome any of these hurdles to set this path moving forward today. This could be work right now in terms of anything that you may need to do, something that is feeling open-ended from the past that needs to be addressed right now. This is that moment of consideration, and we like this because it is a moment that is helping you kind of clear out the blockage, as it were, in terms of potential situations or circumstances from the past that may be feeling open-ended, that may are leaving you feeling somewhat vulnerable. You are doing this all for the eventual moment of being able to move forward right now into those situations, into those circumstances that you really identify is that path that you are trying to lead into right now. So what we're actually seeing is today is going to be a day potentially of a lot of planning and addressing anything that is feeling open-ended, that is giving you some moment of anxiety or doubts and fears. A lot of clearing up of any procrastination energy, as well as what we're potentially seeing right now, especially with this like forward and backward like orientation right now. This could be a lot of that procrastination energy coming to the surface that is requiring you, but encouraging you to accomplish the things that you need to accomplish at this time. Fourth card coming through right now in our 5-card spread is, we have here coming to the surface, Lovers in its reversal. So one of the things that we're also seeing right now is partnership is playing a lot of important concentration in today's reading. This is also looking potentially right now at partnership energy, bearing in mind that this is not necessarily based on romantic partnership. This could be addressing any very significant or important partnerships in one's own life right now, putting those optics on them. Again, there could even be something very important that is occurring right now about your own perception on situations or circumstances from the past related to partnership, that given your new position, given this new place that you find yourself, you are now looking back on these with that perception to help overcome any hurdles or to try to get some clarification on why these partnerships were not necessarily working in the way that you would ideally desire right now. This is going to hit a few different ways depending on how you fall on this collective. For some of you right now, this could be doing a lot of internal work right now within the self to heal up some of this internal blockage that you yourself may be experiencing, potentially around situations and circumstances from the past are related to partnerships that were not necessarily in an ideal situation or circumstance. This could be unhealed partnerships. These could be partnerships that did not necessarily lead to divine union. We see that there is this moment that they are coming to the surface right now. But what we appreciate about them is this is all being done for a point of correction, a point of orientation, in recognizing where you are moving towards right now with your eye focused on the future, but requiring, even as you move forward in that way, some observation point and recognition on past experiences to help guide you forward from this point with a greater sense of easement, with a greater sense of possibility. And this work right here is where we are also potentially seeing some of this vulnerability coming into play, because this backwards observation, these situations and circumstances from the past, either rising up in either a practical way right now or in a way that is requiring you to do a lot of this internal mental work right now, does leave you feeling somewhat vulnerable, even as we see the fact that you're not letting yourself get stuck in that energy. You're doing this work for a very important reason, to guide your path forward from this time, helping to overcome these blockages, helping to overcome these hurdles. But it is requiring a little bit of backwards viewing and assessment, particularly in the realms of relationship energy or partnership energy that was not necessarily in a good place, that either requires from the past some point of correction right now, or a better sense of optics on why something wasn't working so that you can move forward from it with this sense of peace and with this sense of clarity. Fifth card that we have coming through right now in our 5-card spread, before we start getting some clarification on these cards at this moment, is our 10 of Swords in its reversal. We've been seeing this card a lot as well. This is that rebirth energy that we are seeing, something coming back up. This could be feeling, again, like a lot of internal work that you're currently experiencing right now. This is a completion of a cycle that may have been very difficult or painful for you at this time. This is that moment of coming back out of that, allowing yourself, as I said, that point of healing around situations or circumstances that may have caused some point of pain, some point of difficulty, some point of anxiety. This backwards observation is effectively allowing you some sense of closure at this time. That point of observation on what was not working, all to the effect, all to the goal of allowing you to move forward from that point, not to allow yourself to feel stuck or trapped around those circumstances or situations, but having that point of observation so that you can move forward in a more functional, empowered way. But this work, while it is so vital, and while we see that there is a lot of activity happening around this right now, it is very difficult work. It's very difficult work because it's going to be tugging at the heart space. These are hard truths that are needing to be observed at this time, but all for the sake of your own rejuvenation at this point. Hence why we see so much of this vulnerability. For many of you as well, this could be a moment that it is easier to be able to do this work right now because you're feeling like you have the collective support right now in a way that you may not have it prior to this, of energy that you feel is moving with easement as you go forward. And it is this easement of movement, this facility that you're starting to discover around yourself, around your own goals, around your own path right now, that is helping build this clarification, helping build this perception shift, so that you can really leave these situations and circumstances from the past where they intend to need to be in the past. But with this point of orientation to build this sense of closure as you proceed forward from this point. Now let's continue to get some clarity on these cards right now. Clarification between our Strength card and its reversal in combination with our Chariot card energy. So this feels like a little bit of a contrary emotion that you may be feeling today, because what we're really seeing is, while we see that you are making progress today, the Chariot energy is here. It's showing that not only is progress being achieved, but you're feeling that there's some kind of unified effort that's coming into play here. You're feeling that power of not only you being able to move your own path forward at this time, but the collective energy around you right now also feeling like they are all pulling in that same way, shape, or form, but also experiencing some point of vulnerability in the expression or even in this moment as you push forward in this capacity. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our King of Wands in its upright. This will feel a bit different depending on whether you align to feminine or masculine energy right now, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to. For masculine energy, what we're really identifying right now is this is a moment of empowerment. We like seeing this because we did see some blockages coming through for the masculine yesterday, especially around emotionality. But today we see that this is a day that masculine feels a bit more of that kick of energy, moving into their sense of being able to communicate their passions, communicate their plans, putting a lot of effort right now in the communication of plans and passions to drive your path forward as you go on now. There could be a lot of heavy planning and communication today, particularly on the masculine side. Because what we're really identifying is this is the way the masculine energy is overcoming some of that hurdle as it relates to their own feelings of vulnerability at this moment. In a way, masculine energy isn't allowing themselves to sit in that point of vulnerability, which still could be tied to some of that emotional confusion that we saw yesterday, because we haven't necessarily seen that emotional confusion being cleared up here on this pit deck yet so far. But what we're really seeing is masculine energy is taking their own power back here, coming into a sense of empowerment, very similar to what we saw the feminine doing just a few days ago. And masculine energy is utilizing this moment to articulate upon and move with planning as it relates to any situations or circumstances that are making them feel somewhat vulnerable, all to the effect of coming back into their power. While for feminine energy right now, this is a moment that could be feeling a little overwhelming, because what we're really identifying right now is you've got a lot of positive energy that is moving in the same capacity and degree with you at this moment. Feminine energy right now is feeling a moment of vulnerability. That is very clear, potentially around some of these past situations or past circumstances that are rising up to the surface right now, either very practically or very metaphysically. But feminine energy is also feeling a lot of support even as you're going through this moment of vulnerability, both with the collective energy around you that you feel is moving in the same direction as you, shares your own goals, shares your own plans, laying this path ahead with yourself right now, either in union and in manifestation with a masculine energy that you recognize has this ability or power to also work and to lay these plans, to have that healthy communication at this time. Or for the other half of the collective right now, this is feminine energy working to manifest this type of energy towards them at this moment. For both masculine and feminine energy, what we really appreciate right now is, even through some feelings of vulnerability, you're not letting yourself get stuck in that emotionality. Rather, your masculine energy is using it as a point of power at this time to drive forward on their plans, to drive forward on their goals, while feminine is similarly keeping their focus on that path moving forward, working again in union with masculine energy that is similarly aligned with them in doing so, or working to manifest this type of energy, potentially even receiving some sort of guidance today, feminine, to help you as you set this path forward for yourself at this moment. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Chariot energy in combination with our Four of Swords in its reversal. This is some of that forward and backward that we're seeing here right now. Having to have a moment that this is where we're seeing some of that vulnerability coming into play, because you may be feeling like you're kind of caught in a little bit of a limbo stage, because what we're seeing here is that there's this pull forward right now, this drive to move forward, this drive, active movement today in pushing forward on your plans and goals with collective energy that you feel is sharing that same directionality at this time. But at the same time, something from the past rising to the surface, something from the past coming back forward right now. And this could even be some situations from the past that need to be reviewed to see if there is this path forward at this time. That could be where some of this communication is coming from right now. For others right now, this is that moment of having to observe some situations and circumstances from the past in order to free oneself from them so that you can have that clarity as you proceed forward from this point. May I please have one card to clarify? This could also be feeling like some of that procrastination energy coming into play here too. Because this is something from the past that you may have left in the past that needs to be addressed. We've got here, we love this. What a productive day here. We've got double 4 cards coming out. This is beautiful energy that we're seeing here right now. Why? Look at this. This is all planning. This is all planning cards, planning. But again, a planning with a sense of optimism at this moment. What did I say about some of those situations and circumstances from the past potentially rising to the surface right now? This could be why, because there's a lot of care and orientation that is being paid right now in terms of what that path looks like, who you're moving forward with, whether there is a point of easement that is to be seen right now. For some of the collective right now, this is actually looking at some situations and circumstances from the past and having to make a determination point as to whether there are any points of optimism or possibility or promise still there, or if these things need to be left in the past so that you can move forward with the most functionality and the most success as possible at this moment. For masculine and feminine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to. For both energies, this can also be talking about having to bring up some situations and circumstances from the past to make sure there is a point of easement there. So this could also be talking about some of that procrastination energy that we were discussing, having to address some things from the past that you may have let lay dormant for some time, all for the sake of being able to build this clarity as it relates to the direction that the Chariot's going into at this moment. Beautiful energy here for both masculine and feminine energy, because what we're really identifying is this is that point, as we mentioned, observation to require for that release process as you continue to move forward on that ideal path for yourself that you feel is leading to a point of promise and success at this time. While for others right now, this is a moment of something coming back up to the surface right now so that you can create that sense of easement and clarity as you proceed forward to overcome any of these feelings of vulnerability that you're experiencing at this time. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Four of Swords in its reversal in combination with the partnership energy of the Lovers in its reversal. So this is going to feel like a bit of some of that past coming back into play. Relationship situations as it relates to the past does not have to specifically mean romantic relationships, though it certainly can be. This is any partnership that had some kind of deep significance from you that may have had to go dormant to a certain extent of time because it wasn't in alignment, maybe even potentially something that is attached or related very deeply to your past, rising back up to the surface to be addressed right now. This is either an internal rising in within you, something that you are putting a lot of thought and consideration on. Thank you for the gift. As you move forward from this point, or this could be some tangible circumstances and situations as it relates to past partnership energy coming back to the surface today that needs to be addressed on a practical level. May I please have one card to clarify? clarification coming through right now. 2 cards to clarify, and they're both transverse. Oh my goodness. Look at these cards. This is where we get that strength card in its reversal. Why is this a moment where you're seeing, here's the answer to the question. We've got so many beautiful cards here, looking forward into the future with a sense of optimism. We got here our Chariot card in combination with the 4 card. Masculine energies, feeling very good in the planning moment right now with a lot of energy around communicating passions. What's going on right now? Well, this is why these situations from the past are rising to the surface right now that need to be addressed. Here's why. This is a blockage point, my friends. This is the blockage point. You will recall there has been a concerted effort over the last few days, not just to move forward, but to release a lot of the grief and the sadness and the doubt from the past experiences as you proceed forward from this point. Yesterday, we saw that for masculine energy, there was a lot of vulnerability coming to the table as it relates to some feelings of regret coming through around circumstances or situations you may have felt were effectively blocked because of something not coming forward in the way that you would ideally wanted to have it come forward. For feminine, we saw that boundaries were being put up very strongly yesterday due to a lot of care and orientation between what we consider to be healthy or unhealthy karmic connections right now. The reason we are seeing that some of these circumstances around past partnership are coming to the surface right now is because there is still a concerted effort for both energies to come into a state of healing on them. This is some of that emotional confusion that we saw around the masculine energy yesterday with that Knight of Cups in its reversal. That confusion energy also translates to the feminine who is similarly experiencing it. For both masculine and feminine energy right now, there could be a feeling of some sort of level of ambivalence or uncertainty as it relates to how you emotionally feel right now, related to past partnership energies from the past, partnerships that are not in a space of easement, partnerships that have some kind of breakage point, partnerships that may have been dissolved or left kind of feeling open-ended. A lot of this emotionality is coming into the play right now, even as you proceed forward. Why? Because it's an investigation on your own heart space. It's an investigation on your own heart space at this moment, because again, the goal is to be able to move forward right now without carrying the grief, without carrying the fear, without carrying the pain. And this is almost like prodding at a wound to a certain extent, right? As you move forward to kind of, again, that's that shift of perception to ask yourself how you are feeling around those situations or circumstances that you feel are in a point of either not being in union or open-ended, to determine how to heal, how to continue to heal. And this is interesting because these are in their transverse. So what we're really seeing to a certain extent is there's a moment here of uncertainty. There's a moment here of uncertainty about how you feel at this time in combination with where you are right now. That is that point of observation that you are giving yourself. And what we're really identifying is for both masculine and feminine energy right now, we are seeing that there is that point of uncertainty about how you feel about some of these situations or circumstances. Why? Because we're seeing that you're moving in a space of positive progress. That whatever these circumstances and situations were, they did cause some level or degree of pain. They did cause some level and degree of heartbreak. And this is why you're having that moment of consideration towards them right now, because you're looking back at them right now and you're frankly going like, do I still feel like that? Do you still have those emotions? Are these emotions something that like you want to pick back up again? Or are they only going to continue to cause you difficulty or pain the more you allow yourself to make space or make room for them at this time? This is that moment of that past orientation coming in to help overcome what is still feeling like a bit of a blockage. But I will say, a blockage in a different way right now, because what we're really identifying is this blockage that we're seeing isn't necessarily one that is completely oriented in feeling some heartbreak, but it's more feeling the uncertainty and the ambivalence around them right now that is requiring this point of investigation. Continuing to get clarity on these cards right now between our Lover's card in its reversal in combination with our 10 of Swords in its reversal. So what we're really seeing right now is there is a moment of a cycle having come to a point of completion and a new cycle starting. Really feeling a lot of that rebirth energy coming into play. A lot of this could be feeling somewhat empowering today, particularly with this Chariot energy here in combination with the Four of Wands. There are some bright opportunities on the horizon that you're keeping your focus on at this time. But even as you're having this bit of a rebirth moment, there is some care and orientation being paid to any partnership that you feel is not necessarily in a point of healing, something that feels like it may need to be addressed, or something that you are still putting a lot of consideration on, particularly as it relates to situations and circumstances from the past at this moment. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification. Oh my goodness, coming through right now with our Queen of Cups in its reversal. This is going to feel a little bit more difficult for the feminine energy today. And you will notice these energies are reflecting each other, because where did we see the masculine energy yesterday? Well, we saw a lot of that with that Knight of Cups in its reversal. Masculine energy going through a moment of emotional confusion as it relates to what they were offering and how they could emotionally communicate what they were offering at this time. Feminine energy has picked up some of that emotionality from the masculine today, and it may be feeling to a feminine energy right now like there is this moment of emotional overwhelm that you're currently actively experiencing in some state or fashion. For feminine energy, this is going to be feeling like something that is coming through in one of two ways. This could either be communicating itself as this emotional feeling of overwhelm as you move through today, feeling a lot of emotionality and not necessarily knowing how and why to express it. While for some of the feminine energy, this could be literally feeling like you're shutting off your emotions. You may be feeling like you're disassociating or not being able to connect with your emotions at this time. Because feminine energy, what we're really seeing is feminine energy is feeling that point of emotional overwhelm around any of the partnerships that aren't necessarily in ideal union at this time. Again, there's a moment here of feeling this restart energy, or allowing this to be a cycle of coming into a new beginning around some situations and circumstances, potentially as it relates to partnerships. Feminine energy is putting care and attention right now into these partnerships. It's not that they're not thinking about these broken partnerships right now. It's more just the fact that feminine energy is at a point of emotional overwhelm with them. Feminine energy is just feeling a bit emotionally overwhelmed to be able to navigate or manage some of the work or the energy that is required potentially right now to fix or amend some of these right now, which is potentially leading the feminine energy. Again, we've been seeing this over the last few days, to put a lot of care and degree in this new start that they're trying to give themselves at this moment. Because feminine energy could be feeling right now like there is a bit of an emotional loss that they're feeling as it relates to some of these partnerships that aren't necessarily in their ideal space. For feminine and masculine energy right now, that is working through these difficulties in union right now, this is going to have to be a lot of work that is done right now to make a feminine energy feel like they are in a point of comfort. We saw a bit of this tipping point happening. Feminine energy was keeping their boundaries up over the lake yesterday, specifically to allow for a safe space for their heart space to open at this time. But even doing this work is leading feminine into a place where they have to recognize and feel some things that are very overwhelming as it relates to their own doubts and fears and partnership at this time. These are either situations that they're currently actively working through right now with a masculine energy who is good at communication, who is good at planning, who is good at being able to articulate their needs right now to help overcome any of these hurdles, to allow some of this restart to occur, even while the feminine is in a place that feels somewhat emotionally overwhelming. While for the other part of the collective right now, this is feminine energy giving themselves this new start, allowing this to be a moment where there may be a lot of care and attention that the feminine is giving to their own selves right now as they proceed forward from this point, because there is a recognition point of wondering about where their emotionality falls in these spaces or places of partnership not being in an ideal situation. Feminine energy may be having a very hard time emotionally communicating what they are feeling at this point, particularly as it relates to partnerships. While for masculine energy right now, this could be feeling like a real moment of difficulty because as we saw in the cards yesterday, masculine energy was having a moment. Potentially the masculine energy that was not in union was having a difficult moment, specifically around any feelings of regret, any feelings of remorse, any feelings of grief over situations or circumstances that they now effectively feel like there is a boundary. There is a strong boundary that has been put up around the feminine energy. And for masculine energy right now, this is that moment of looking towards the feminine energy and feeling a lot of this vulnerability potentially, because we see here that there's something about that feminine energy that you are still identifying is emotionally cut off from you to a certain extent. It's not necessarily even the fact that this feminine energy doesn't have emotionality for you at this time, but you are recognizing that either this feminine energy around some circumstances and situations are coming in right now in a point where they themselves are not necessarily in a place where they can articulate or express their own emotionality at this time. That this is a feminine energy that is either you're now feeling anxiety, that they're in a point of emotional overwhelm, or that they have pulled away from their own emotionality at this time. And this is that moment that for some of the masculine collective, you may be trying to put a lot of care and attention into how to effectively come back from these circumstances and situations. For half of the masculine collective right now, this could be putting in a lot of work and concentration and trying to find this path forward of easement to try to get back into this union energy with this feminine that you recognize has this emotionality for you, but is in a point of overwhelm or pulling back on that emotionality. While for the other half of the masculine collective right now, this is you potentially walking away from something in which you feel that there is no hope or possibility of this coming back into union because the feminine energy has blocked their own emotionality from you to such an extent that you don't think it is possible. While for feminine right now, this is a lot of emotional overwhelm you are just feeling around the damaged partnerships right now. A lot of self-care is going to be needed for the feminine today, even as we see the feminine energy working through to a great degree in laying these plans and laying this path going forward. And for feminine energy right now, potentially a lot of consideration in where your heart space is at this moment, potentially even feeling some of this ambivalence, which is why we see some of the confusion of this feminine being in its reverse emotional energy. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, clarification between our King of Wands in combination with our Four of Wands in its upright. Two beautiful cards that we love to see today, potentially, particularly for masculine energy. This is beautiful energy for the masculine right now, because what we're really seeing right now for masculine energy is this is a moment that you're coming into a sense of empowerment in some way, shape, or form, even while you're going through a moment that could be feeling very vulnerable. You're not letting yourself sit in that vulnerability. You're just taking this opportunity to really plan. Masculine energy is overcoming any doubts or fears in the heart space right now through active planning and through setting a path for themselves at this moment, building some of these positive experiences in the wake of some of the things that they're feeling at this time. While for feminine energy right now, this is a moment that you yourself are keeping a lot of concentration on building towards these higher movements of planning today. Heavy energy around planning. A lot of consideration towards this, a lot of keeping towards positive, optimistic outlooks as it relates to the future right now. Either working in union right now with masculine energy that is similarly aligned in this capacity to help build this clarity as you go forward from this point, or working to manifest right now masculine energy that is aligned in such a degree and way as you build these plans going forward for yourself at this moment. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now. We love to see this card out today. We've got here our Three of Pentacles. So what we are really identifying right now is for both masculine and feminine energy, we keep seeing there is a return to building a strong foundation at this time. A lot of care and consideration, not just in terms of moving towards spaces and places of delight and enjoyment, but making sure that there is a solid foundation underneath those plans as well. For masculine energy, this is a heavy, heavy day of planning, of doing a lot of this work, both like in like the aspirational space right now, but also in the practical space, which is what we really, really love to see. While for feminine right now, this is a moment that you yourself are keeping a lot of care and attention in building this practical foundation for yourself, even while setting these more aspirational goals in terms of going forward. This is keeping a lot of optimism and promise potentially around situations and circumstances that you're looking forward to right now. Working again to either manifest towards you right now a masculine energy that is in this zone of being able to be very communicative, be very good at planning, or working tangibly with an energy right now to shore up and build this foundation as you continue this path forward for yourselves at this moment. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now now these are some very interesting cards to see in combination right now, because what we're really identifying is we have here our Four of Wands in combination with the Three of Swords in its transverse and the Six of Swords in its transverse. So what are we seeing here right now? This is that moment that feels a little hot and cold, because we do see here that there are some situations and circumstances that you're feeling some anxiety or ambivalence around right now. You're uncertain how you feel. There is some active healing occurring in your heart space right now. You're doing a lot of work to potentially move away from situations or circumstances that are causing too much pain, that are causing too much grief. We almost see to a certain extent today that there's like a abandoning of those feelings right now. The abandoning of those feelings is like the solution through that vulnerable moment you're feeling is by laying these plans for yourself at this time to help you overcome any of the hurdles that you may be currently experiencing as it relates to some situations or circumstances that you may just be feeling are creating a moment of ongoing frustration or heartache for you. You're just not necessarily paying any attention to them today as you keep your mind focused on building these opportunities for yourself at this moment that you feel are going to lead for the best sense of promise and enjoyment and success moving forward from this time. May I please have one card to clarify? Thank you so much for the gift. Clarification coming through right now. We love this. Look at all these planning cards. These are beautiful. We've got here our Eight of Wands in its upright. So as I said, this is overcoming some of that hurdle. What we really kind of like about this, which I have to just point out is kind of lovely, is like there is this moment of acknowledgement around from both feminine and masculine energy around some situations and circumstances that you may be feeling some active heart pain about. You may be experiencing in the feeling like you're not sure what to do. You're not sure how to move forward. You're not sure about finding that path of easement around some situations or circumstances that are causing this degree of pain or frustration. But what we like about this is feminine and masculine today, they're just not putting that much care and attention into it. They're not letting themselves get caught in any of this grief, a lot of the same grief that we saw rising to the surface yesterday. This is that moment of just like turning away from it to a certain extent and finding that point of easement in setting up and moving towards those moments for yourself that you feel are going to lead to a lot of promise or opportunity or enjoyment right now, and moving with a lot of purpose in putting all of your concentration into that combined energy of saying what feels like it's creating something stable and supportive for you at this time, and what are things that you're just honestly looking forward to at this moment. A lot of planning and communication coming through here, but not necessarily around the places or spaces that are causing any frustration or heartbreak is what we're really identifying. There's almost like that ongoing hold music in terms of something that is creating some feeling of frustration, potentially something from the past that is rising to the surface that is still making you feel some of this frustration. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Three of Swords in combination with our Six of Swords in combination, transverse, in combination with our Queen of Cups. This is the emotional blockage for feminine right now, my folks. This is it. Feminine energy is feeling some of that emotional blockage today, but they're coming through. I need to point out what's really interesting about this is the feminine energy is feeling that emotional blockage through a point of ambivalence. It's a point of ambivalence. Feminine energy is recognizing to a certain extent around some situations or circumstances where they don't know how they feel. This is the same confusion energy that we recognized yesterday with the masculine now coming over and leapfrogging onto the feminine, because the feminine energy is identifying and articulating right now. It's not the fact that their heart is completely healed, but there's some situations or circumstances that they just are kind of not sure how to proceed upon, because there's a moment right now of looking at some points of healing and not necessarily seeing a way to go forward that doesn't allow them to have to be able to release the pain associated with these circumstances or situations. Hence, this becoming a bit of a frozen moment for the feminine energy, because while the feminine energy is actively working to heal around situations and circumstances right now, it's a moment of uncertainty in terms of how to let go of some of the pain and the anxiety associated with them, hence not being able to see a path forward, hence the feminine energy feeling that moment of emotional doubt and confusion around them to a certain extent, but keeping their attention towards those productive spaces where they're feeling that point of easement, and they're recognizing that plans and communication are a lot easier at this time. Well, for masculine energy right now, this is a moment that we see that a lot of your orientation is also on your own plans, on creating these moments of easement, on creating these moments of stability, with at the same time an orientation right now around a feminine energy that you're recognizing is going through a bit of this blockage right now. For the feminine energy right now, there is this moment that, again, if you are in union with masculine energy, this could be working with them a lot right now in this realms of communication and planning to help overcome some of these challenges that you are currently experiencing right now around the confusion in your own emotional space at this moment. While for the masculine energy that is not in union right now, this could be feeling a lot of confusion as it relates to a feminine energy, because as we see here, this is a feminine energy that to one shape or degree right now has pulled their own emotionality away from you. And there's a point right now of not necessarily being able to understand or see where this feminine energy is. And it is creating a blockage for you, because we see here that while you may be desiring to come into a point of healing, you're not necessarily sure of a path forward at this time. That there's something here about observing this feminine energy, seeing the fact that there's a lot of hurt that this energy is currently carrying at this moment, and being unsure how to be able to reach this energy because of that hurt that has happened between you, because of some of that grief that you guys are currently bearing together right now. So this is masculine energy basically feeling to a certain extent that the blockage point with the feminine right now is some of this same grief that caused the rift in the first place. While for feminine energy right now, there's an anxiety potentially related to opening one's heart space or being very protective of the heart space today, because you are still in a space of trying to actively heal from this. This is creating a bit of a hurdle for the feminine. But we see that for both masculine and feminine energy right now, there is this point of productivity that's coming through. This is either for masculine energy, this is trying to address this hurdle. For some of the masculine energy right now, this is recognizing that the achieving or of the hurdle through this blockage point is through communication, is through creating this moment of building this bridge, if you will, between the masculine plans and their own desire to build this point of stability at this moment towards a feminine that is feeling some emotional uncertainty at this time. Well, for the other part of the masculine energy right now, this could be a lot of concentration on setting this path solely for yourself at this moment, because you are feeling some kind of degree of vulnerability and being able to go towards a feminine that you might not necessarily feel is open or receptive to what you are trying to offer them at this point. While for feminine energy right now, this is, again, holding some of this space, feeling this weight today of this unhealed energy around the heart space. But again, either working in union with the communicative masculine to help overcome these hurdles with effective planning and communication, or just doing a lot of this work for yourself at this moment with this desire to manifest a masculine energy that effectively wouldn't put you in this state of confusion as it relates to your own heart space or some of the pain that it is carrying. Continuing to get clarification on these cards. Clarification between these cards right now is that transverse? Oh my gosh, that's transverse. That's it. That's our It's transverse too. This is where that whole confusion point happens. What's happening here? What is happening here with this devil card and its transverse? Do you see what's happening? I'll explain it. So what we're really seeing is happening right now, that's paying a lot, this very needs to be put into a point of consideration, is feminine is recognizing that some of the reason that they're not necessarily effectively able to open up their heart space at this moment is because they're not sure it's safe to do so. They're not sure if it is safe to do so. This is where we're seeing the feminine energy allowing this to be a pause moment around any circumstances or situations that have caused any degree of distress, that have caused any degree of heartbreak, that they're having a difficulty moving away from right now. Because of the pain that they're carrying, they're actively working on healing, but they're not necessarily feeling like there's any pathway or movement forward on this right now, because that ambivalence that I was describing isn't necessarily ambivalence. It is uncertainty as it relates to whether this is actually good for them or whether this is feeding into unhealthy coping mechanisms, bad modalities of thought, unhealed karmic connections. This is that moment that the feminine is taking to look at some of those experiences from the past that are potentially rising to the surface and really starting to say, yes, you may feel a lot of emotionality towards them. Yes, the feminine might describe or articulate the fact that their heart is very connected to them, but there's a deeper inquiry that the feminine is doing right now as to whether it is good for you. Either whether it is good for them, as whether these are healthy karmic connections, or whether the feminine energy has to have a point of observation in recognizing that their heart might be pulling them towards something or someone that they don't necessarily think is in their best interest to do so. That's why we see the feminine in that moment of emotional overwhelm. Feminine energy is assessing right now circumstances and situations potentially even related to past experiences right now, or feelings from the past rising to the surface that are requiring this moment of investigation into identifying the fact that potentially your heart is in a point of heartache over situations and circumstances that weren't necessarily good for you from the start. So we like this because this is in a way, shape, or fashion a point of active healing that the feminine energy is experiencing even through some of this moment of confusion or uncertainty here. We also see the fact that the feminine energy isn't necessarily letting this block them to any degree. They're not utilizing this as a moment of complete stuckness, but instead, feminine energy is utilizing this to put them into a point of productivity by laying down a lot of plans, by utilizing that chariot energy, by building something that feels solid and stable and not hurtful, even while leaving some moment right now in their emotional center to try to navigate some of the feelings that they're currently experiencing right now. While for masculine energy right now, this is similarly a moment that could be feeling a little counter to itself, because while we do see that you are moving forward right now in places or spaces that you're feeling a lot of success, you're feeling a lot of potential victory at this moment, there is still this point of addressing that you yourself are currently working through right now around a feminine energy. In this way, shape, or form, this could be feeling like to some extent that this feminine energy is at a point of emotional overwhelm, which is either indicative of this feminine energy being too emotionally dysregulated to be able to communicate with, or pulling back and shutting down on their own emotional center. This is that moment that you yourself are feeling this moment of ambivalence or uncertainty on how to proceed forward towards this energy, because you are asking the same question towards the feminine energy right now. You are asking that whether this is bringing you into a productive space, or whether this is potentially a moment that you are feeling connected to something that wasn't necessarily serving your own needs or in your best interest in the first place. There's a moment here that we like to see for both masculine and feminine right now that is requiring a point of deeper healing. For the masculine, feminine, and masculine energy right now, there, like we really appreciate there is this moment right now of coming into orientation around what you feel potentially pulled towards at this moment versus what you feel it might be ultimately best for you at this time. And this is that moment that is requiring this bit of stuckness as you determine what to do going forward. But what we love about this is that masculine and feminine energy are really keeping a lot of optics into what that path forward looks like. What's going to lead to the path and the productivity space that is most ideal for you at this time? For feminine, this is going to feel like a bit more of a trigger point today because we see a lot of that emotionality coming into play. While masculine, we're almost seeing that a lot of this work to overcome some of these obstacles right now is what's encouraging you forward at this moment to help overcome potentially any doubts or fears that you may be experiencing from a feminine energy that is effectively blocked off to a certain extent. Because what we're also seeing with the masculine here is there could be a point of recognition and understanding why that feminine energy is behaving or acting the way they do, why the feminine energy is either over emotive right now or pulling back on their emotionality. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our 3 of Pentacles in combination with our 8 of Wands. So beautiful energy today, because what we're really seeing right now is this is a moment for feminine and masculine energy where there is a deep degree of care and concern in building strong foundations, putting the communication in today, putting in the planning, all to the scent. Remember how we saw this card was coming up in its reversal yesterday, that we were in a point that was requiring to a certain extent a moment of unbuilding, a moment of breaking down foundations, getting back to the foundation of things, moving away from tower situations, all to the extent of building strong, stable foundations around yourself at this moment. And those are being worked through and built right now based on plans, communication, as you go forward from this point, even potentially some travel right now or setting travel plans to help you navigate some of these fears at this moment. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now. We love to see this card in its upright. We've got here our 9 of Cups in its upright. So this is a lot of that optimism that we're seeing right now coming through for both masculine and feminine energy, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to. For masculine and feminine energy right now, there is a moment of feeling a point of appreciation, really recognizing what you have to offer at this time and moving in alignment with energy that shares that own degree and ability of seeing you and what it is that you truly have to offer. A lot of this work right now for both masculine and feminine is really around the self, coming back into that state of confidence, coming back into that state of opportunity, coming back into that space of valuing yourself, valuing what you have to offer, valuing your uniqueness, valuing what you have to bring into the world right now. And this is what's allowing this moment or opportunity right now of building this foundation based on the communication that you're putting forth at this time. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our 8 of Wands in combination with our Devil in its transfers, which is really this moment that we are seeing for both masculine and feminine energy right now. That one of the reasons that you're putting forth a lot of this communication right now, a lot of this productivity, is the fact that you are going through a moment right now of self-healing. That one of the things you will notice over the last few days, there has been some moments right now of feeling like you don't have the full optics around situations or circumstances, trying to build that clarity for yourself right now. What we are seeing here is around any circumstances or situations that you may not necessarily be sure whether or not they're in your best interest at this time, or whether they're bringing you into unhealthy coping mechanisms, bad modalities of thought, whether they're more connected to those unhealthy parts right now. You're getting the clarification through plans. You're getting the clarification through communication. You're letting that give you the optics to help determine if something is moving in a healthy, productive way, or if it's just keeping you kind of trapped or locked in some of this old, lower vibrational energy at this time. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with 7 of Pentacles. This is beautiful because what we're really identifying is that moment of growth, that moment of planning. This is putting a lot of beautiful care and attention right now into the earth, into what you're growing. And what we like so much about seeing these cards in combination right now is there's an appreciation of the self coming into play right now. That again, it's not about seeing immediate results for your action right now. This is that moment of here is how you're getting the clarification right now as to whether something is ultimately aligned towards your best interest right now or not. It is getting that clarification, setting these plans right now to identify whether something is in your best interest by seeing its longevity, seeing where it's leading, feeling and seeing the degree of putting that energy into that long-term goal, towards that long-term benefit, really putting that care into what you are trying to grow at this moment is what is helping you identify what feels like it is a productive space right now versus something that you feel is just limiting or blocking or holding you back in an unhealthy fashion at this time. This is that point of orientation and clarification that you're getting through the communication that you're receiving right now that is really helping you determine where you're going to invest your time and energy moving forward from this point. Final cards for today's spread between, and these two cards are absolutely beautiful to see in combination with each other. We have here the combination of our 9 of Cups in combination with our 7 of Pentacles, having this sense of appreciation for yourself at this moment, having that care and concern, coming back into your center as a correction point for some of those doubts and fears that are rising to the surface. This isn't a moment that all of those doubts and fears are gone. We still see here with this Strength card in its reversal, there's still a lot of vulnerability on the table, but you're feeling that supportive energy around you. You're focusing on those long-term path, those long-term goals with the unified energy around you. For masculine, a lot of planning today. For feminine, a bit more of difficulties or hurdles to be faced potentially in the emotional space at this moment. But we do appreciate that for both energies, even through some of the emotional hurdles the feminine is experiencing, there is still a lot of care and consideration in appreciation of the self at this time and what you are ultimately trying to grow, either for yourself at this moment or in union to assist one another as you proceed forward from this point. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through, and it's on the floor. We love this. Ace of Pentacles in its reversal. This is that moment of committing yourself and into the energy and spaces that you want right now. And it may even feel to a certain extent right now like you're overcommitting. There's almost a moment right now that this doubling down to a certain extent is required or necessary as it relates to some circumstances or situations or scenarios right now. For masculine energy, we see that some of this overcommitment that might be required right now might even be necessary as a point of easement to correct for a feminine energy that you may be experiencing is having some kind of blockage from you at this moment because they feel like they can't necessarily be in an emotionally safe place because we see here that there's a lot of anxiety as it relates to that devil energy and its transfers. For masculine energy, there could be feelings that you're pouring a lot of energy in right now to make up for some of these blockages that may have occurred recently because of your own ability to come forward in the way that you would have ideally necessarily desired right now. This is an overcommitment for a recorrection point to be able to show your true intentionality at this time and your own commitment to put the time and energy in to do so. While for feminine energy right now, there's a lot and a heavy degree of putting a lot of this care and attention into yourself at this moment. A lot of care and attention in investing in yourself at this time because we see for the feminine energy right now, you're getting a lot of outside support to give you that inspiration and encouragement that you need right now. You're putting a lot of care and attention into moving away from spaces and places that you feel are holding you back or not necessarily seeing you to your full potential right now, that it may have led you to some of that emotional overwhelm that you're experiencing. But instead, you are overcoming some of these hurdles or those feelings of self-doubt or vulnerability in your vulnerable emotional place right now by overcommitting into the tangible space, by putting a lot of this work forward right now for the effort of having that energy come back to you in the long term outcomes. Bottom of the deck for today's reading right now is Okay, we've got here our Five of Pentacles in its reversal, which is very intriguing to see as a reversal in the bottom of the deck, because what we're really identifying that is happening here is the fact that there is, for both masculine and feminine energy right now, an active abandonment wound that is being triggered and simultaneously healed. Now, why is the healing of the abandonment wound the bottom of the deck message? Because what we're really seeing here right now is this is some of that point of optic that is changing right now around the masculine and the feminine energy that is requiring this moment that there's less of an engagement point is what we're saying there's less of these like interaction points, because what we're really seeing is what's happening here for both masculine and feminine is when the trigger point is getting hit, it's resulting in a journey inward. It's not creating. You'll notice we don't see a lot of reactivity points occurring in this moment right now. We're seeing a lot of productive energy, but what's happening here is that when these moments of trigger are being hit, it's now resulting in an internal moment. And that needs to be very carefully paid attention to, because if that internal moment isn't accurately expressed, it can be misinterpreted. For the masculine energy right now, the feminine going quiet to a certain extent or moving backwards could be interpreted in the wrong way as a lack of emotionality. While we see here that this is quite the opposite. The feminine energy isn't having a lack of emotionality at this time. They're doing a lot of internal work to make sure that they're not reacting in a negative way. Masculine energy might misinterpret and confuse that moment with feminine energy not having any care or concern. Similarly, for feminine, we saw this happening just a couple days ago because feminine energy did not get that emotional offer, did not see that emotionality from the masculine, which confused them and led them to go into their own reverse Queen of Cups position. So for masculine and feminine energy, the important message that's coming through right now is if you're doing a lot of this internal work, that's all fine and dandy. You got to make sure that you're communicating if you're doing the internal work, because that can often get misinterpreted and could trigger another abandonment wound in the act of actively healing your own. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it with me. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, Strega.com. My private readings are done over video with the option of recording sent to you afterwards. And if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Just mention your TikTok subscriber ID at the point of payment. Also, please keep in mind, if you book a reading with me, it is a two-step process. You have to book the reading and then you have to pay for the reading. There are two different buttons, so please make sure you hit both if you would like to have that reading. Most importantly, please, 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 please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never PM you. I will never inbox you. I will never slide into your DMs and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver to you. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website. So I encourage you to do it there. I want to thank you so much for sharing this reading with me today, and we will do this again tomorrow.